So hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. So this is a video that I have been wanting to do, and yes, I'm sitting in my living room floor. I wanted this video to be kind of like a sit down and chat, you know, between like us girls or us guys or whoever is watching this. I wanted this to be, you know, not behind like all the lights and the makeup and the what have I purchased and all this. This is just literally a sit down to talk about my journey with breast cancer. And it's not to give pity for me for what I went through. It's to hopefully educate or inspire someone to get a mammogram who maybe they forgot to get a mammogram but they need one, or who maybe has felt a lump and they've not gone and got it checked out. That's what my goal is. You know, I have such a small following on Instagram, and I do feel though within my heart that somehow I need to make an impact to others about breast cancer, especially that I went through it at 34. You know, when I was younger and growing up, breast cancer was something that women didn't have to worry about until they were 50s, 60s. And I feel like every single week I am hearing about someone getting it younger and younger and younger. And this is not meant to scare anybody, but I do believe education is key and prevention is key when it comes to breast cancer. And please know, I'm not a doctor or anything like that. This is me sharing my story, what I went through. And if you're going through it, to know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There is hope. It's going to get better and it's going to get easier. So, without further ado, let's really just get right into it. So I think a big question that I often get asked is when. So when did I find a lump? How old was I when I found the lump? And kind of how did it go from there? So I'll share with you in 2018, in January of 2018, I actually found a lump. It's very small, pea-sized lump, tiny, in my left breast. And it was one of those things that when you felt it, it was almost like, is this hormonal? Is this something that's been there and I didn't know? But I'm always someone that I'd rather get things checked out than not. And if I can say one thing from this video, be your own health advocate. If you want a second opinion, you have a right to a second opinion. If you want to find a new physician, you have that right. You are your own advocate when it comes to your health. So when I found the lump, my husband was actually out of the country. He was actually deployed. And so I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell him. He has a very important job that he was doing, and I did not want to take his focus off of what he was doing. I actually never even shared with my sister or my family because I honestly thought it was nothing at all. So I went to my OBGYN, my gynecologist, and she did a self-check, or not a self-check, excuse me. She did an exam, and she was like, I think it's probably hormonal, but will you feel better if we send you for a mammogram? And I said, yes, there is a history of it in my family. So of course, immediately I said, yes. Went to the mammogram, and believe it or not, I still did not share with my husband or my family that I was going, because again, I thought this was going to be an in and out thing. It was something I could share with them later. I did not think it would be anything serious. So I went to the mammogram, had the mammogram done, and then they asked me to go into another room and wait and see the radiologist. He came in and shared with me that what he saw in the mammogram was something that he just didn't like. He said that if it was pretty much like a normal cyst, it would have very smooth edges around the lump or the cyst, and mine had very jagged edges. And he said he did not like the way that it looked and wanted me to have a biopsy. So, as you can imagine, at this point, I was scared, very scared. So from there, I had a biopsy scheduled for, I want to say it was 2 days later, I want to say. Looking back, I feel like I should have kept a journal of all of this, like a written journal, and I didn't. And that's something I kind of kicked myself for not doing that. But anyhow, so I went in at that point, I called my husband. I texted him and I said, whenever you can, just give me a call. He immediately knew something was wrong. You don't get a text saying, hey, just give me a call and it'd be nothing. So he immediately called me, and I shared with him that I was going to have a biopsy. Again, I was like, oh, it's going to be nothing. They're just doing this out of precaution. Everything's going to be okay. And then, of course, I shared with my sister that I was also having the biopsy done. And I was 34 years old at the time, so young, right? So you're thinking 34. No, I don't have breast cancer. So I went in 2 days later, had the biopsy. Once the biopsy was complete, let me back up to the biopsy. During the biopsy, they took a biopsy of, I had 2 lumps in my breast. One I could feel, one I could not feel yet. And then they actually took a biopsy from one of my lymph nodes on my left underarm. So post-biopsy, they told me I would have results within 2 days, I want to say. And I, of course, gave them permission to call me with the results. I wanted to know. I didn't want a phone call of come back in the office and we'll see you or anything like that. So I did say they could call me and give me the results over the phone. And unfortunately, on February 7th of 2018, I did receive the call that it was indeed cancer. So where do you go from there? Those are the words you feel like you're never going to hear, right? Sorry, I don't want to cry. Those are words you never think you're going to hear. And to hear those, it hits you like a ton of bricks. It really does. So from there, you hit the ground running with doctor's appointments. First, before the doctor's appointments, we had to get my husband home. I told him if he wanted to stay deployed that he could. He was with his men and women in uniform, and he went there to do a job. And then I completely understood that. And of course, he was like, are you crazy? I'm coming home. So he came home. Red Cross was simply amazing. So we found out on February 7th. Unfortunately, when I found out, he was in a completely different time zone, obviously. So by the time that he spoke with me, it was probably February 8th, the next day, I believe. So that was on like a Wednesday, and he was home walking through the doors of the airport that Saturday. So Red Cross was absolutely fantastic. I cannot say enough wonderful things about those people. They were amazing. So where do you go from there? That's always the next question. Like, okay, you find out, you get the phone call that unfortunately, yes, you have cancer. What happens next? And what happens next is you feel like you meet 200 million doctors. Like you really feel like you meet so many doctors and people to walk you through this journey and help you. And they're all absolutely amazing. So I hit the ground running with doctor's appointments, met my oncologist who, I said earlier, if you don't like your physician, you can find one. Thank good Lord above that I was blessed with like the best oncologist ever. She's fantastic. I love her. So is my radiology oncologist. Love them. Oh my God, my surgeon, he was an angel from above. Plastic surgeon, she was fantastic as well. So you see what I'm saying? When you meet with a lot of doctors, that's how it goes. It's like doctor after doctor after doctor. So thankfully I had a wonderful team behind me, as well as a great support system here at home. I had my husband, I had, friends, and then of course my family. So meet with doctors. I was told that I had stage 2, triple negative invasive ductal carcinoma. So what that means, obviously stage 2, we're very familiar, most are familiar with the different stages of breast cancer or cancer in general. And then the triple negative has to do with your estrogen positive or estrogen negative. Unfortunately, mine was the more aggressive of the two. So triple negative is a very, very aggressive breast cancer. Thankfully, I had been doing the self-exams and did catch these lumps when they were a pea size, and smaller instead of being larger. I thank the Lord every day for that. And invasive ductal carcinoma meant that it had spread to my lymph nodes. So I had that biopsy done on a lymph node, and it had spread indeed to those lymph nodes. So kind of after you meet with your oncologist, she tells you that, and then we put in a plan of action. What do? All I knew is I wanted to kick cancer's ass and never look back. So the treatment plan was 8 rounds of chemo. I went every other week. I started the first 4 treatments. I went every other Wednesday, and the first 4 treatments were doxorubicin, which is also known as the Red Devil. And let me tell you, it is the freaking devil, okay? Like, this chemo absolutely kicked my butt. You know, thank God my husband went to every treatment with me and was right there by my side, because these treatments can get long. They can unfortunately be very isolating. And so if you're currently going through this or know someone that is, be sure that they have something to do during those hours that they're in there, especially during these COVID times when people are unfortunately having to go through chemo alone and can't have anyone there with them. You know, make sure that they have either a book that they love, or for me, YouTube was actually a huge outlet for me. I started watching makeup tutorials, and I started watching vlogs, and I mean, anything I could to take my mind off of what was currently going on is what I did. So just make sure that whoever you know, or if it's you going through it, make sure they have something to kind of take their mind off of what they're going through, because those hours that they're there getting that chemo is really gonna be something that they're gonna want to take their mind off, because they know that next week ahead of them is not going to be fun. They're going to be sick. They're not going to get up out of bed. They're not going to want to eat. All sorts of things. So, I digress, sorry, but I went through 4 rounds of the doxorubicin, and then I had 4 rounds of Taxol. And that one wasn't as bad. It was bad, but it wasn't as bad. I didn't have as much absolute sickness, but I did have massive muscle pains and bone aches with it. It was pretty intense. And then at the end of every chemo treatment, right before I would leave, they would put this thing like a beeper on my shoulder, and that's called Neulasta. And it would, let's see, I'm trying to think, about 4 hours after your chemo finished, you would start to hear it beep, and it would prick you with a needle, and it would inject the medicine into you. And what that medicine was for was to help with your white blood cell count. And, you know, it was something that I knew had to be done in order to help me get better. But every single time I would hear that beeping start, I knew that I probably had an hour before I felt like crap. So, chemo, went through it. Before chemo, I did have a port placed. So, I have a scar here. I have another scar here because some of you may not know it, but I actually had an open heart surgery when I was 16. Another story for another day. But, so you can see my scar here from where I had my port. I had it placed about, I would say, a week before my chemo started. I do think the port was a good choice for me. I don't like being stuck with a needle, so I did have that placed. What do you go from there? Well, I'm going to back up. Let me talk about during chemo, and this is a very sensitive subject. And I'm going to do this without crying, I swear. I didn't want to cry at the beginning, or when I did cry, but I did. So, did I lose my hair? Yes. And if I can insert a picture, I will. I did lose my hair after about my second chemo treatment. It started to really come out, and I have thinner hair to begin with. And you know, losing your hair, you think that's something that's oh, it's just hair. That's not going to be a big problem. That'll be fine. No, losing your hair is very hard, especially as a female, because a lot of females this is the truth. I don't care what anyone says. We identify with our hair. We identify that we have a certain haircut or a certain hairstyle, color, whatever it is. And for that to be gone, that is hard, okay? It is difficult. So I actually had a friend of mine, she came and shaved it for me because I just knew that it was getting to the point where that's what it needed to happen. So she shaved it for me. I did lose all of my eyelashes and eyebrows. Thankfully, I grew up dancing and doing pageants, and I know how to put on false eyelashes like a freaking pro. And I wore false eyelashes without any lashes to attach to it. Yes, I'm that good, and I did it. And again, I will show you some videos or show you some pictures on what I look like. And for my eyebrows, I drew them on. And I'll tell you this much, I never missed a chemo appointment or a doctor's appointment and didn't have my hair done. And my makeup. For me, that was what made me feel good and made me feel like me. It made me feel like Kimberly. So I was determined that as crappy as I felt and as bad as I didn't want to get out of that bed, I was going to have that makeup done. And by God, I did. Never miss an appointment with it. And that's not to pat me on the back, but that's to say, if you're going through this, or if you know someone going through it, again, maybe encourage them to wear a little makeup during those days. I mean, listen, they're going to have days where they feel like absolute death. And they are not going to get up and put on makeup, and don't you dare suggest it or anything. But on their days when they feel good, or if you know how to do makeup, and you have a friend going through it, offer to go to do her makeup. Go over there, spend some time, and do that. But anyway, I was talking about chemo, post-chemo. Where do we go from there? So post-chemo, I finished chemo in May of 2018, and I actually went back to work for a few weeks. So I'm somebody, I don't like to be held down. However, the job I work in, I won't share what I do or where I work just for my own privacy. The job I work in was in and out of some situations that could have made me very sick. And at that time, going through chemo, I was susceptible to being sick. You know, your immune system is absolutely shot. So I had to take a leave of absence from my work, which was hard for me because I love what I do and I love the company that I work for. Still work for that company actually because they're amazing. So went back to work for about 6 weeks because I couldn't stand to sit at home. And then I actually had to take another leave of absence from work because I chose to have a double mastectomy. That is a personal choice, and it's one that not everyone wants to make, and it is not an easy choice to make. But I really didn't have a choice. So with the history of my family, I decided to go ahead and get the genetic testing, and I am BRCA2 positive, which means I have a very high chance of it returning, especially if I had not chosen to do a double mastectomy. So even though it was my choice at the end, my physicians very much so suggested that I do the double mastectomy. So I did a double mastectomy with reconstruction. I did have what is called a nipple sparing mastectomy, which, this sounds crazy, but I got to keep my nipples. And that might be TMI for some people. I don't really care because breast cancer is not pretty. Breast cancer is a lot of TMI. So I'm sharing it all here with you. So I got to keep my nipples. And during the mastectomy, they put in what are called expanders. Okay, so they go in, they removed all the cancerous tissue, and then expanders were placed. Now, for me, I think the hardest part of my entire process was waking up after the mastectomy. One thing I hate more than anything, and I think most breast cancer survivors would say this, is when someone makes a comment, if I ever have breast cancer, just chop my boobs off. Who cares? You would care, okay? You would care. You would hate it. You would hate waking up with your chest flat as a board and you feel like everything as a woman has been taken from you. You would hate it. I hated it. I would not even look at my chest for weeks and months. My plastic surgeon was like, you have to look at this in order to be able to, recognize infection or anything like that. And honestly, I refused for quite a while. My husband was the one that was there, and sorry. I had to get my life together. I feel like I was just gonna absolutely lose it, so I had to take a beat. Anyway, so I didn't want to look at myself. I refused because it's so hard. It is very hard. Sorry for the sniffling, but so when your expanders are in, I actually, after a few weeks of healing from the actual, surgery of the mastectomy, you start to go to your plastic surgeon, and believe it or not, she injects a needle straight through the breast tissue into the expander and starts to increase and build up where you would like your breast size to be back to, if that makes sense. So it's a gradual thing because that skin from removing that cancerous tissue, that skin is very tight. And honestly, I still can't live, that's as high up as I can get this arm, right? And this has been 3 years, y'all. But so I would go to her, I want to say once every 2 weeks, and no, you cannot feel the needle. That tissue is dead. That is another thing. That is a myth. Breast cancer is not a free boob job. No, honey, I wish it was. I wish these things were perfect, round, everything. No, it is not a free boob job. You no longer have any sensitivity. I cannot feel anything in my breast, nipple, even though I got to keep my nipple, nothing, okay? There's no sensitivity there because all of that tissue has been removed, okay? Everything. So it's not a free boob job, okay? And even though they look good compared to what I've been through and having a mastectomy, they're still wonky. I don't mean to laugh, but they are. My boobs don't look like a boob job. So don't say that to someone who's oh, must be nice. You're going to get a free boob job out of this. Yeah, I sure am. After I lose all my hair, I am so sick as a dog. I have to have my chest cut off, reconstructed, and possibly go through radiation or take medicine for the rest of my life. Yep, I'm getting a free boob job. Obviously, that's me being sarcastic, but you get what I'm saying. People can just say very insensitive things. So, we got my chest to where we wanted to be as far as expander size, and I don't mind sharing with you guys. I ended up being at 275 cc's per breast. I was barely an A cup before I had breast cancer, so my breasts are actually larger now than they were. So, that is one plus, but by gosh darn it, I deserve that after what I went through. So after you've got them expanded, this is my journey. This is not what everybody goes through. After they were expanded to where I wanted them to be and where my physician, she thought they were going to be a good size. That is then when my radiation began. So I had radiation. I had 36 rounds of radiation. And honestly, for me, radiation at the beginning was more isolating than chemo. And I know that sounds nuts because nothing was injected into my body, or I didn't have to sit there for hours upon hours, but I had to go every single day of the week, Monday through Friday. So that was 5 days a week for 7.5 weeks, give or take, okay? So, it is so tiring on the body. I don't think people realize how radiation can be so tiring because you're going every single day. They have a cast that's specially made to your body. So I had to sit a certain way with my breast exposed a certain way so they could treat the area that they needed to treat with the radiation. When you're in there, you are not to move. Okay, so you have to be very still. Not only that, but they will ask you for periods of time, 30-second periods. You've got to hold your breath for those 30 seconds. So if for some reason, you know, I couldn't hold my breath that long, I had to practice before I got there. Fortunately, I could, so that wasn't that big of an issue. But it just felt so isolating. You feel like you're in this machine. No one's in the room with you. Your eyes are closed. You can't see anything, but you can only hear the people talking to you that work there. And it was just, for me, I mean, it was so hard. And maybe I was just a baby at that point in the stage. Maybe I had gone through so much. I was just like, I want this to be over with. So I did that for 36 rounds. And then after that, I was to wait a few months. I had a cream that, you know, I had to put on that tissue to really kind of help the radiation scars not be as severe. Thankfully, they're not that severe. I do have a little bit of radiation under my armpit, you can see, but the breast tissue doesn't look too terrible in that area. So from there, I was to wait a few months, and then I was actually going to have my expanders out and my actual implant put in. Well, a little something changed our plans. So let me back up. So I finished radiation in October of 2018. Okay, I want you to remember these dates. Back in August, earlier that year, I had unfortunately gone through a chemo-induced menopause. So during my chemo journey, we had the option of like me doing these injections to try to like help with fertility. And to be quite honest, the injections were so rough. I only had one and I just couldn't take it. I cried so hard with that injection. The needle was huge. And even my husband, he was like, no more. If it is not meant to be for us to have children, we will not have children. We will adopt. We will figure it out. We will go from there. The needle, I mean, it was so excruciating. So we chose not to do that. And we literally chose to put it in the hands of God. In August of 2018, so I had finished my chemo, I had my surgery, my mastectomy. I went to my OB and we just did like some blood work just to see what does it look like? What's my future look like? And they called me back and told me I was in a permanent menopause. So, you know, my husband and I had never been ones to like just be like, kids, we want like a ton of kids. But when that's taken from you and you're told you can't have children, it sucks. And that's when you think, I wanted one. I want a child. And I can remember we had friends here in town, and I remember just being devastated, absolutely devastated. But God works in mysterious ways, because in November of 2018, I, out of nowhere, got a period. And then we found out in December 2018, we were having a baby. So, again, the Lord works in very mysterious ways. So, thank the Lord, I was through all my chemo, surgery, radiation, and the implants could wait. So, I ended up having a little baby. Yes, 2 years of my life were crazy. I was either going through cancer treatments for chemo and everything, or having a baby. So nuts. But back to the cancer side of things, I did get the phone call about 2 days post mastectomy that they did do, you know, once they take that cancerous tissue from your body from the mastectomy, they do go run a pathology result on it. And as hard as the chemo was, and as much as it kicked my butt from one end of the room to the other, it worked. And the pathology results came back that it was absolutely clear of cancer. Now, I know that that doesn't mean I'm 100% cancer free. I know that really until 5 years out, that's not the case. And I think what made me do this video is I actually have a follow-up appointment. I go every 6 months to my oncologist. And I have a follow-up appointment Tuesday. And guys, it never gets easier. As crazy as that sounds, and it's like, oh, you're just going in for blood work. But that blood work could change my life. It could change everything. So, I pray I get good results. I'm always a nervous wreck. Like, probably the night before and the day of when I go to that appointment. So, Tuesday will be fun. But just pray. You know, that's all you can do. And you know, this journey wasn't easy, but obviously my hair grew back. I ended up having my implants put in. I did that about 9 months after my little one was born. So I have those in now. And I think I want to remind people that breast cancer and cancer in general is not a death sentence. You know, you've got to give faith to your doctors and to the Lord above, if that's what you believe, and in yourself. And you have to be willing to let people take care of you and be with you at this time, because it's the hardest thing I've ever gone through in my life, for sure. But deep down inside of me, I want to share my story. And did I cry? Yes, I've cried. And if you judge me for that, then you do. But I share my story just because I feel it's so important, because you just never know. And if it encourages someone, like I said, to go to the doctor, get their mammogram, whatever it is, then I've done my job. You know, this video was worth it. It was worth me sitting here and crying to you guys and everything. And, you know, if you have any specific questions in general about my breast cancer journey that I didn't cover, let me know, because I'm sure there's a lot of things I've missed or that I don't even think about, being that I was the one that went through it. But please let me know. And if you like this video, please consider subscribing. This is a hobby for me, doing makeup tutorials and sharing stories, sharing things I purchase and love. But I always want followers and people to watch my stuff. So please share the video. Please like, comment, whatever you want to do. And if you're going through this, know you can do it. You're going to kick cancer's ass. And I don't even care that I cussed, because cancer is an ass and you're going to kick it. And that things will be okay. Things might seem grim now, and believe me, I still have days. Still, to this day, when I look in the mirror, I cry. It's just the life we're going to have to live with for the rest of our lives, for us that's gone through it. But I have a story, and I feel that I have, you know, a passion and a reason for everything I do, and to live life to the fullest, and to live for me, and to live for my family, and for no one else. Do what makes you happy. Be you. Always be you. And for those of y'all watch, thank you. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you all soon. Bye, y'all.